Here's my audience, my outline, and my verbal citations. Hi, my name is Kendrick, and this is Introduction to Speech. Who are you? Are you the same person that you were 20 years ago, 10 years, 10 minutes ago? It is often argued that the capacity and inevitability of our growth as individuals is the cornerstone of the human experience. This is none more prevalent than discussing the life and works of the civil rights activist Malcolm X. Today I will be going over the growth and ideological transformations of Malcolm X. The three areas I will focus on are his background. 2, I will discuss his transformation into a member of the Nation of Islam and a civil rights activist. And 3, finally, I will finish by discussing his ideologies, how they grew, and the tragedy of his death. So let me begin by telling you about Malcolm X's background. In 1925, Malcolm X was born Malcolm Little in Omaha, Nebraska. His parents, receiving threats from the KKK, would move around some. At the age of 4, his house would be burned down. It was most likely done by a group, an offshoot of the KKK, known as the Black Legion. 2 years later, Malcolm X's father would die. It was officially stated as an accident, but is widely believed to also have been done by the Black Legion. When Malcolm X was 13, his mother would suffer a nervous breakdown and be institutionalized. Malcolm X would then be placed into foster care. He would eventually drop out of high school. He would perform a menagerie of jobs, but eventually would succumb to a life of crime. At the age of 20, he would be arrested for larceny and breaking and entering. He would then be sentenced to 8 to 10 years in prison. He would be in prison for all 10. Adel Ahmed, author of Islam in Black America, The Religious Life of Malcolm X, quotes Malcolm directly when he's talking about this time of his life, stating, "I had sunk to the very bottom of the American white man's society. And soon now, in prison, I found Allah and the religion of Islam, and it completely transformed my life." Which brings us to the second point, discussing his transformation from a criminal to a proponent of the Nation of Islam and a civil rights activist. While in prison, Malcolm X educated himself. And while skeptical at first, he joined the Nation of Islam, which, while holding many traditional Islamic beliefs, also believed in 1, black nationalism, 2, white people were devils, and 3, to forsake your family name as it was given to them generations ago by a slave master, and to take on the moniker of X instead. It's stated in the Ideological and Spiritual Transformation of Malcolm X by Trevin Jones, quote, "This was not an easy transformation for Malcolm. This is because his life was entrenched in his thinking and actions. However, over a period of learning more about the Nation of Islam and Allah, Malcolm was persuaded to adopt this new belief system that elevated African Americans instead of reducing them to the lowest level of existence. Upon release from prison, he'd become a more prominent member of the Nation of Islam. He would start as a minister, but would soon be hosting assemblies which were hosted world leaders, including such as Fidel Castro. In 1964, Malcolm X would officially break away from the Nation of Islam, though. There were several reasons for this, a culmination of such. And one of the most prominent was the leader of the Nation of Islam, the Prophet Elijah Muhammad, was engaged in a sexual scandal. I will finally finish by informing you of his growth following leaving the Nation of Islam and his tragic demise. Immediately leaving the Nation of Islam, Malcolm X's ideology softened tremendously. He became a member of the he converted to Sunni Islam instead. He met with Martin Luther King Jr., whom he had previously ridiculed for being ineffective. He makes his pilgrimage to Mecca as all Muslims who ought do. Upon going to Mecca, he finds a plethora of Muslims, all of different ethnicities, including white Muslims, and upon his return, he encourages members of his organizations to work with white people. Unfortunately, February 21st of 1965, Malcolm X was assassinated. He was shot 21 times by 3 members of the Nation of Islam. In a witness to Malcolm X's assassination, a conversation with Roland Shepard, Judson L. Jeffries Quotes Roland Shepherd saying, "Suddenly I heard shots being fired from what seemed like all directions. Of course they were not, but it seemed that way because of the echo. I did not know where the shots were coming from. I instinctively hit the floor. When I looked up, I saw Malcolm X standing and glaring down at one of his assassins." It is also important to take this with a bit of skepticism as to whether or not the Nation of Islam acted alone, as at the time both the FBI and the NYPD were actively surveying Malcolm X. I just told you about Malcolm X and his controversial life and his growth. I started by giving you information of his background. Then I informed you about his radical transformation into a civil rights leader and a member of the Nation of Islam. Lastly, I discussed how his philosophies grew and how he died. When discussing Malcolm X and his works, it is imperative to discuss what time in his life these works are from. For like all individuals, through his life he grew, and his ideologies grew with him. Thank you.